7,000 RPM redline. Ladies and gentlemen, 1988 BMW M3, the E30, the one that started it all. What a beautiful car in this hennarot red with tan interior. Classic, classic, classic. And super excited to drive this. First time behind the wheel of an E30. Also going to be reviewing the 2002. We actually have a whole playlist. We're going to be comparing this E30 to every other generation of BMW M3. And in terms of looks, I think that this E30 is one of the best looking M3s. Classic design, and of course, way back when crash regulations were different, you have this large glass house effect, belt line nice and low, classic proportions. This car has actually been tastefully modified by its owner, Kenny. So a few things. It has aftermarket struts and shocks, as well as eye-box springs. He added an LSD, and the original S14 engine, which is a 2.3 liter inline four, making 193 horsepower, has actually been bored out by this company in California. I think it's called Apex, and it's now 2.5 liters. And with this underdrive pulley, it's now making around 210 to 220 horsepower, up from the original 193. We've also got a Borla exhaust with some high flow cats. And with that out of the way, let's see how she drives. 237,000 miles, but in really, really great condition, given the mileage. 5-speed manual. By modern standards, quite light, around 2,800 pounds. And first impression is that you can tell this is from a totally different era. A lot more noise, vibrations, harshness, and that's part of the charm of this car. The transmission doesn't like to be rushed, especially going into second gear. Have to be very patient there. The steering, incredibly light and quite a slow ratio. Although at the mileage, it's still pretty direct. You're not getting too much slop right off center, but a very slow ratio. This is a car where double clutching, the owner said, helps it quite a bit. The most winningest touring car of the 1980s. This car is legendary, and it's such a treat to be behind the wheel. Rack and pinion steering. A lot of the M5s, we actually have a whole new M5 comparison that we're also shooting today. And a lot of those, the first few generations, are actually recirculating ball, but with the M3, they always did rack and pinion. Woo! 7,000 RPM redline. And a lot of this just feels so period correct. The throws are pretty long. There's a little bit of lateral slop to the gear shift. The steering is light and slow. Floor-mounted gas pedal. The clutch has a very gradual engagement. In fact, when I was first starting it, we were on a little bit of an incline. It took me by surprise because it's quite a high engagement. It's very, very gradual, which makes it actually, this would be a great beginner's car if someone is learning manual for the first time. Chassis not too taut. It's a little bit softer. You can tell that, I mean, obviously in the 1980s, chassis technology isn't what it is today in terms of stiffness, rigidity. But this engine is buzzy in the best way possible. It's not a problem. I love how this is billowing some smoke. This is 2002. See, this is why it's important to know double clutching, because when you're driving older cars, sometimes you have to. In this car, especially getting into second gear, synchros seem a bit worn. The suspension, it's not overly stiff, it's actually very communicative. You can feel the textures in the road. But again, think about this is the 1980s, so you're not getting some super sophisticated damping. Oh, but this car just feels, it feels so right. It feels very congruent. All the various elements are coming together. At the center, very light, and then once you get past 5 or 10 degrees, the steering wheel loads up quite a bit. Such a cool car, man. And this thing is actually peppy. You know, at 210, 220 horsepower in a car that only weighs around 2,800 pounds, it's no slouch. And you gotta love the very classic, very simple interior as well. Of course, these gauges, something BMW has used for so long. Interior very purposeful, this really large wheel, thin diameter, 3-spoke design that they've used across all the M3s. There's no telescoping, there's no tilt on the steering wheel. You got these metal pedals. Such a charming car. And in the perfect color, the perfect spec. Oh, there we go. Heel towing a little bit awkward with the pedal placement, and the brakes, I'm not going to say they don't inspire confidence. I'm going to say that the first little bit of travel is pretty dead, and then it starts biting. Not the most linear in that regard. But I feel like everything here, it matches, it's congruent. You're not surprised by the brake, you're not surprised by the transmission, you're not surprised by the steering, because it all kind of behaves in a way that is sporty, it's light, it's period correct. I'm not sure if you can hear all the creaks and rattles. Remember, this car is 230,000 miles. Yeah, definitely a car that eggs you on. I want to just rip it right now, but heel toe, actually not too bad. Just a slight learning curve. Oh my god. The front end actually getting a little bit light when I'm on the gas mid-corner. Wasn't expecting that. I love how much even the rear view mirror is just vibrating. Such a charming car. Such a charming car. This is a car that just wants to go. It definitely eggs you on. It rewards you as you ring out the engine. As you drive the car harder, it really does come alive. A few corners back there, starting to feel a bit of the dynamics. Unfortunately, you don't have as many lower speed corners here to really push it, get the tail out or anything. But what a charming car, man. Sometimes getting into fifth gear, you have to move it quite a bit to the side, actually. So I'm in fourth, and then fifth. You really got to make sure you're going sideways quite a bit. Otherwise, you get stuck between third and fifth. These are the kinds of cars that we're going to miss. I mean, the buzzing, the way it's so alive. And you have to remember, what makes for a fun driving experience is not necessarily what makes for a good car by modern standards. It's not going to be as comfortable, it's not going to be as refined and quiet, but like the buzzing, the way that this thing is just so engaging. These are the kinds of things that we have to enjoy while we still have. And it's thanks to owners like Henny, who are taking great care of vehicles like this, that we can enjoy them 30 plus years after they're first released. This was the first M3 I drove that day, and the E30, it's hard to believe that it's the same lineage as the G80, the most recent M3, because they're such completely different vehicles. The way they drive, the philosophy that comes through as you drive it, and the overall experience. Obviously, more than 30 years between the two, and still shocking that they're the same lineage. The E30 is perhaps the most iconic M3, but you have to keep in mind that many of these vehicles with larger-than-life reputations, it's hard to live up to them when you actually get behind the wheel. And while this was a very charming car to drive, it feels very period correct. The 1980s for BMW and for other manufacturers weren't nearly as sharp or dynamically competent as cars of later generations. I remember reading on some BMW forums that the E30 and E36 were the two generations with the best steering, but after driving this car, I wouldn't put it in the top two of BMW steering. That being said, it has an undeniable cool factor, and in my opinion, out of all the M3s, it's definitely the coolest. My friends, let me know what you think of the E30 BMW M3. We have a lot more BMW videos coming out. As you can see here, we have this amazing turnout in Raleigh, North Carolina, and we're gonna be comparing a lot of these M3s and M5s. Subscribe if you haven't already. Check the playlist comparing all these different vehicles. This is the one that started it all. Much love, my friends, and I'll see you all in the next one.